Do you have herbs and you just don't really know what to do with them? You don't harvest and utilize them? Well, hopefully today I can give you a few tips and ideas on things to do with them. In the landscaping, herbs can be so beautiful. They're kind of that natural beauty, but they have so many benefits, and most of the herbs that we plant are perennials, which means they will grow year after year after year. They die back in the wintertime, but come back in the spring and summer. And you can cook with them. As we all know, you can put it in your food or sprinkle on top. They also have so many medicinal benefits. And a lot of times that's what I use them for. And I'll share some of that with you later. I use a lot of cayenne pepper for medicinal purposes, and I save the little jars that they come in. So I have utilized these jars, and I have, and this one is like parsley. Now, all of these, I have used a dehydrator that I got for Christmas that I'm loving. So these herbs have been dehydrated, but just look at the color and how beautiful. This is parsley. It keeps that beautiful green color. We've got parsley. This is basil, which I really love basil, and I'm going to give many more reasons for loving that. This one is sage. It's not quite full yet. I dried a bunch of sage, and this is all I got out of it. But I also put it into a powder form instead of a leaf form. I don't know if you can tell that. But I use sage, of course, at Thanksgiving to put on my turkey. So I do love that. I have a lot of sage growing. This one is oregano, which also has many purposes, both culinary and medicinal. So anyway, today we're going to go out to the garden. I'm going to grab the basket, and we're going to go and harvest some herbs. The thing about herbs is the more you harvest, the more they will continue to grow and produce for you. So let's just go out in the garden and we'll see what we find. The first thing that we're going to harvest is sage, and you can see its beautiful blue-green leaves. It is so pretty, and this has been planted probably 3 years or 4, and it comes back every year. It will bloom, and right here is a beautiful little purple bloom that will have if you allow them to bloom. So what we're going to do is just take the scissors and just cut. There's our first cutting, and that's sage. Beside the sage, we have basil. I use basil a lot. So to harvest the basil, to keep it bushing, I'm going to cut right between these 2 leaves and just cut a sprig of it. If you cut right where the new leaf growths are, if you can see here, there's tiny new little leaves growing, and I'm just going to cut right above that. You'll notice on this basil, it's got a little pod right at the top. That's where it's fixing to bloom, and if you want to continue harvesting, you don't want to let it bloom. So I'm going to clip there, and the same with this one beside it. Here we have more sage, so I'm going to clip some more of it. It's kind of growing over my tomato. right, y'all, we have quite a large amount. This is just two types of herbs. We have sage and basil, and what a large basket. That's going to take a lot of drying. I looked over at the parsley, and I do have some of it that I also want to dry, but we'll do it for another day because this is going to be quite a large amount to deal with. But how exciting. Let's go in and do something with it. So here we are back inside with our basket of sage and basil. And the first thing that we need to do with it is wash it. You don't have to wash your herbs if they're clean and dry, especially after a rain. However, I sprayed a little liquid 7 on some of my plants because I was having pests that I needed to deal with. So because of that, I'm going to fully wash my herbs. If you wash them, you have to be sure to lay them out flat on a towel or paper towels or something and let them fully dry before you try to bundle them or put them in the dehydrator or deal with them that way. So first, let's get to washing. I have stopped up my sink and I'm just going to run cold water, and I have cleaned the sink first. Run cold water, and we'll start out with the basil, and I'm just going to drop it down in the water. You want to be a little gentle with the basil because it'll bruise really easily, and in the process it won't hurt it, but you don't want your dried herbs to be all bruised and black looking. All right, I think that's all of the basil. I'm going to also just kind of run it under the water and rub the leaves just a little gently. Shake it off as best you can, and then just lay it on the towel. I mentioned also having herbs in pots or in your landscaping, and probably most of you already know it, but they also are really good for deterring insects. And what a beautiful way to do that. They smell good. This basil, I wish you could smell it. It smells just delicious. If you love basil. If you don't love basil, then don't plant it. Plant something else. Or plant it because it still is beautiful and it still helps to repel insects, which is another reason they tell us to plant it around our tomatoes. Now it's time to wash the sage. I don't know if you can see all the basil spread across there. It filled up that side of the counter. So I'm going to have to get more towels to put the sage on. All right, that empties the basket. Oh my goodness. This sage, it makes you think of Thanksgiving. Makes me think of the Thanksgiving turkey. I didn't harvest as much of it. It will keep growing. Well, the basil will too, but the basil was critical. It needed to be harvested so that it could continue producing for me. And in just a minute, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite ways for using basil. For now, let's get the sage all soaking and clean. By the way, I did empty out the water from the basil and put in fresh water for the sage to rinse it. And all we're doing is rinsing. It's not really washing. It's just rinsing off any bugs, any debris, any spray. But I don't want to leave it in the water for very long. So all I'm going to do is just rinse it well. I'm going to get towels and find another countertop to spread it on. All right, it's all washed. I'll show you the sage in just a minute, but I've got the basil all laid out here. It has been washed and it needs to air dry before I can do anything with it. But I have gotten a clean towel with a terry cloth back, and just to kind of rush up or speed up the process as much as possible, I'm just going to try to pat it dry just a little bit, and that will get all the standing water off of it as much as possible. Which should help the drying just a little. to air dry your herbs, which I have done, and that is what I plan on doing with the sage. But to air dry them, it can take a week and a half to 2 weeks, even up to 3. And if you're not in a hurry, which when you're drying your herbs, really, I don't suppose there is any hurry. But the dehydrator, I can dehydrate them in 2 to 3 days usually. Many people have the freeze dryers, and I would love one of those. A lot of the people that I follow have them, and they just rave over how fresh it keeps the herbs and that it doesn't take out as much of the vitamins and the minerals or whatever, even as a dehydrator. But what I have is what I have, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for air, because even air drying is pretty awesome. I've done that when I didn't have a dehydrator. Okay, I'm going to let those be for just a little bit, and let me show you the sage. All right, so here's my counter of sage. I still do need to just lay here all spread out and air dry this way before I try to bundle them. So with the sage, I plan to bundle it and hang it up to dry. And I ended up with, well, there's onions that I've got them dry. And I ended up with just some individual leaves that I laid out on paper towels to dry this way. Okay, we have now washed all of our basil, and it's laid out on the counter, and the sage is over on the other side on the counter. But I wanted to tell you one of my favorite ways of having basil to incorporate it in my diet, and what I have found how it helps me is basil tea. I had extra basil, so I was trying to decide what's the best way to utilize it. So I have a kettle of hot water, and it's already hot. And I have this, it's a tea diffuser, and I just love it. The holes are very tiny. It just has this little cap that fits over the top of it. And yeah, so you can see through it, but the holes are very, very tiny. So if you have tea that is like finer grain, it doesn't go through and it diffuses well. So what I'm going to do is reach up and grab myself a mug. And this fits right down in top of pretty much every coffee mug because it's got the little tabs on the side. So I'm just going to place it on my mug. And I'm just going to take one of the basils and I'm going to break up the leaves because that just helps release the oils just a little bit. And I'm just going to drop it inside this diffuser. You do not have to use a diffuser. Before I got this, I would just put the leaves straight down in the mug and pour the hot water on them and then strain them out. Sometimes I didn't even strain them out. But however you can get them in there is fine. But since I have this diffuser, I do love it. And then I can just lift it right out once the tea is done. Now, when you use fresh leaves, and I'm going to even put the stem in because, I mean, heck, it's also got good purposes for it. When you use fresh leaves, you use more of them. It doesn't take as many of the dried leaves as it does fresh. So you always use more of the fresh. And I'm just filling up this little diffuser. Basil tea is strong, but depending on how long you steep it, you can kind of work with that if you don't like it as strong. I happen to love the taste of it, so I'm just pouring my hot water right over the leaves, filling all the way to the top. And then I'm going to cap it with the little cap because that just holds all the oils in the tea. And then I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. I like to steep mine for about 10 minutes. And then it'll be ready to consume. Now, when you make the tea, Personally, I just drink it straight. I don't add anything else to it. If the flavor is too strong for you and you just don't care for it, it is perfectly fine for you to add some of your local honey. My honey is very local. It comes out of my backyard. But I just like the tea like it is. Okay, our tea has steeped for 10 minutes. So all I do is lift the little diffuser out of my cup of water. And it's just a light minty green, not very strong. You could leave it longer if you wanted to. So let's have a little sip of tea together. Here it is, all steeped basil tea. Nothing but basil leaves. I really love it. And I want to tell you right quick, to try to not take too much more time, but I jotted down a few of the medicinal benefits of basil. Of course, we know it's a very fragrant herb. It is anti-inflammatory. It reduces inflammation in the body, potentially alleviating the symptoms of arthritis. Now, how many of us does that hit? And for me personally, inflammation is my biggest problem. I think overall, I feel like I'm pretty healthy, but I do struggle with inflammation in my feet, my ankles, my hands. You can even see this joint's kind of swollen and kind of hard to make a fist. But this basil tea, I drink a cup of it, not every night. It would do me best if I did. I would venture to say if you had a cup at least 2 times a day, this will be 2 for me because it's still early in the day and I will have some before bed tonight. I have noticed myself, my own experience, it does reduce inflammation and helps to alleviate some of the pain that's in my body when I drink the basil tea. So not only is it anti-inflammatory, it's also antibacterial. It is antioxidant, has antioxidant properties, which means that it protects the cells from damage that's caused by free radicals and can help reduce the risk of chronic diseases. And it generally promotes overall health. I mean, this is just from one little herb. It is also great for digestive health, for blood sugar regulation, for heart health. It is also antimicrobial. And so some of the ways that you can incorporate basil into your diet, if you don't really care for basil tea, you can just use the fresh leaves, even the dried leaves, in salads or soups or pasta dishes. Or you can use the fresh basil as a beautiful garnish because you can just clip off a couple of the leaves and use it as a garnish. It's very pretty. And then you can eat it. And of course, the basil tea, which is my favorite way to have it. And you also, another one of my real favorite things, I don't know if you like this, but basil pesto. Oh my goodness. I really love basil pesto. I haven't made any of it this year, but with all that basil, I certainly could. I do love some basil pesto on a cracker or some French bread or something like that. Oh, yummy. You also can put basil in your smoothies. That's a great way to put it in. Now, I would think it would give a little bit of the flavor of basil, but again, if you just don't like the taste of basil, then there are many other herbs that you could utilize. I personally do love it. I love the smell of it. I've even put it on tomato sandwiches before in the summertime. That's really yummy too. So that's ways that we could use basil. And today we harvested basil and sage. And so sage also has very medicinal properties. Like, it doesn't just have to be put on the turkey at Thanksgiving. Now, what I have already harvested and dried, I did ground in a powder form so I could put it on my turkey. And I did that by drying the leaves, and then I put it in a coffee grinder and just grind it up real fine. But you also could leave it in a bigger leaf type. Well, when it dries, you can crumble it, and so it'll make like a leaf texture. And you can also just store it that way. It also can be used as a tea, a sage tea. And goodness, listen to the things that sage is good for. One of the big things is brain health. It is to help with memory and focus. How many of us do not need to add a little bit of sage to our diet? I could use that for sure. It is also anti-inflammatory. Now, personally, I have not drank just sage tea. It is something I will be trying because I love all the teas. If that's an excellent way to get these herbs in and for our health. So I will be trying it also. And again, if you have to add honey or another herb to just kind of blend the flavors together, you can always do that. But it is anti-inflammatory. It's good for your digestive system, for bloating and upset stomach. And get this one. Now, I had a hysterectomy way years ago when I was younger, but it's good for menopause relief. For those of you, and I never really went through this, but for those night sweats and for hot flashes, you might want to drink you some sage tea, or again, find a way to incorporate sage into your dishes. And again, you could put that in basically anything. It would be really good, I think, in poultry dishes, whether fresh or dried. So these are just a few of the different things, and that's just with these two herbs. And like I say, in my garden, I still have parsley. I have thyme. My thyme is not really doing great, but I do have a little thyme. I have dill, which I've just let it bolt out because it's so pretty. I hope to get seeds from it, because that's the other thing. If it does flower, you can get seeds from it as well. But so many of these things, as I said, are perennials. Plant them, and like you could just plant them around the landscape of your house, or you could put them in a garden, in a pot. You just have to water them. That's the biggest thing. And herbs, most of them don't even need that much water. But the ones that I know of that do not come back would be the basil. It's an annual. You have to plant it every year. Basil, parsley, cilantro, those things you would have to plant every year. But I encourage you to try to plant some of these herbs and use them. Don't just plant them. And I'm looking out on my deck, I also have a pot of mint. Oh gosh. And I also have mixed mint with my basil. The mint basil tea is so good. So that's another thing. I also have chives. I've not utilized them a whole lot, but they're good in a lot of dishes too. So get out there. It's not too late. It's not too late. If you can find herbs at your local outdoor store, go for it. Go and plant them, because you plant them now and just water them and tend them a little bit. They'll come back next year and you will be so pleasantly surprised. So thank you for joining me. I hope you've learned a few tidbits. I'm still learning myself, but cheers to growing some herbs yourself.